Hello and welcome everyone to our Fantasy Grounds map and image creation. This is our Saturday stream where we go over all of the art related stuff as well as demonstrations and tutorials on how to use the rather robust image creation system inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity. So thanks everyone for joining me here today. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been here. I had a lot of internet issues in my area, and today in fact we are having a pretty bad storm hitting us, so if I lose internet today as well, you'll know why. The downfalls of living in rural America. But hopefully we'll be able to get through some image creation stuff here. So there is a lot of really cool stuff that is coming around the corner. I can't really talk about it yet, but I do want you guys to know that there's some rather interesting new art developments that could be happening relatively soon. So very exciting stuff, and as soon as that stuff hits, I'll go into in-depth on all of that stuff. Also, I've been creating a lot of new dice packs for you guys, so we should be getting some new dice alternatives as well coming out shortly, and many other things. So keep your eyes peeled for all of these new features that are going to be coming out here. But without too much further ado, let's jump right into our map creation. It's been a little while. This is the one that we started the last time I streamed, and this was like an alien planet here, like a moon. So we're going to be working on this today, so this should be pretty good. Let's actually just change this. We'll call it like a moonscape. And we were kind of doing a makeshift crater over here as we added some additional kind of elements. So we're going to be going through and creating some kind of cool and interesting elements here. I'm going to show you guys how you can kind of do this. One of the things that you can always do, and this is a great way to kind of achieve these things, is most of everything that we see here is light and shadow, right? So if we were going to be doing this, I actually used, I believe it's a snowdrift brush on this particular element over here. But you don't have to actually do that. You can do a lot of these kinds of things just with light and shadow. As you can see down through here, really the only thing that tells us where we have these ridges are, or it's where we have highlight on one side and shadow on the other. And that's what we pick up on, and our brain tells us that there's something raised there, right? Like there is one side that's getting lots of light and the other side that is not, which is how we kind of identify elements that kind of stick out. So that's why I always kind of push that stuff in our map creation as we go through that here. Like these rocks, for example, we can see that these are rocks, but once we add in, let's see here, let's create a new painting layer here, and I'll call this one Shadow. And if I grab this little guy down here and make sure we get into our painting section, I'm going to go into my stamp, and I'm just going to grab this and drop it right in here. And so what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to hold down R, G, and B, and we're going to make this dark. I'm going to add a little bit more blue back into it, so it's a little bit on the blue side. And then I'm going to lower down the opacity here quite a lot. And I'm going to make this in here, and we can just kind of stamp it along here, right? So here we are stamping out these kind of cast and formative shadows from these elements here. And what this actually does, as you can see, we can move back here. And one of the ways that you can always kind of look at this and get an idea of the impact on it is we can just hide that layer. And you can see that just by clicking a couple of times over there, we've dramatically changed how that kind of affects our playing field here. And so you want to keep that always in mind as you kind of work. I'm going to turn off the aspect lock ratio, and we're going to make this a bit oblong here. And then I'm just going to kind of go in and do a little bit more in these little areas down here. So what this is are like ambient occluded areas. And we can come in here and add in a little bit of extra down in here. Now the way that this actually works in the real world is that these tight little areas in here as this curved rock comes down and meets the ground. We get little areas in there that trap the light. So the light goes down in there and it bounces around and it never leaves. And so that's where we get these little like corner shadows and whatnot. So if you ever notice, like even in your room, if you're sitting in like a room that has angled walls, if you look in the corner, you'll always have a little bit of this kind of ambient occlusion in and around things, and that's where it's caused by. And it's this little gradient that kind of comes out from these edges. And so it's always a good idea to kind of emphasize that. As you can see, and by putting this all in one layer, what I can actually do is I can come into the layer tab over here, and I can actually go into my tint here, and I can adjust these in here. So let's make these a little bit less opaque. We're lowering its transparency, so they're more subtle in our environment here. And what we can do is we can go back into our stamp tool. It'll all be still all loaded up for us here. And what we can actually do is start to add in some additional kind of elements here, making this seem as though that it's a little bit larger as it stands up a little bit taller here. So we get this nice ridge along this edge, and we have this nice kind of soft gradient that kind of comes away from there. Now what I'll actually do, let's make this round once again, is we can come in here and we can actually, let me actually show you guys what you can do if you wanted to. So what we could do, let's say if we wanted to do like a gradient that kind of fades in on this particular area here, right? What we can do is we can go over into our rectangle tool. Let's turn off our stroke and go into our fill. And what we'll do is we'll grab this and we're going to put this in as our fill. So what this actually does, and this is a really cool trick that you guys can always do. If you want to use just a part of an image, you can use this technique. So what I'll do is I'm just going to drag out, same in my my shadowed area over here. I'm just going to drag out an area that I might want to use, something like this, right? Now, not having it set up correctly here, this is all going to be fine because we're going to go into our edit fill area and we can do this. And what we can actually do is, I don't want to rotate it. What I want to do is I want to increase the size of it until I get it to about where I want it to be, something like this. And then again, I can hold down R, G, and B, and I can add in a little bit extra here. And now let's hold down A, and then we can lower down that opacity. I think I might even make it a little bit bigger here. And we'll put it to something like this. And now what I can do is I can just come back into the this edit area over here, and I'm able to expand this out anywhere that I want to. And we can snap this if we want to right to our grid system. And there what I've done is I've actually made a nice soft gradient kind of shadow from that gets cut off with the edge over here. So you can see how powerful this kind of stuff is. And again, I'm going to, don't want to do that. I want to hold down A, and I just want to lower down that opacity just a little bit so we get this nice little gradient in here. Maybe even something like this. And again, you can see how impactful these are when we kind of pull this in here. Now these ones out here I think are a little bit too much now, so I'm going to remove a couple of these. Whoops. Yeah, something like this I think works pretty well. And that's going to give us a really good kind of feeling over here. And we can do the same kind of thing again. We can actually grab now this eyedropper tool, and we can grab this, and this is going to set this up exactly for us here. So what we can do is we can actually drag out maybe some other gradients over here, something like this. And again, I can come in here and move this around, and we'll even make this a bit bigger. And let's go back into our area over here, and we'll do a little bit of a gradient coming from this side as well. What we'll do is we'll do something like this. Yeah, very cool. And this is just going to make sure that we line up right with our edges here. We should actually probably go down here, and we can line this up as well. Excellent. So another way that you can kind of go about this, and as you know, inside of Fancy Grounds, there's always many different ways that we can approach every kind of scenario here. So let's do a different technique here. We're going to create a new effects layer. And this layer, we're going to go down to Adjust Colors. And here what we can do is exactly the same kind of thing here. I'm just going to lower down the brightness here, but we're going to enable a mask. What this does is it allows us to actually map out areas where it's going to work only, right? Like the only section that will be visible to us. And so with this, again, what I can do is I can do something along these lines. I could come in here and draw a section like this, right? We can blur out those edges. We might want to actually, we'll be changing the shape of this and all of this stuff, but we don't want it to be just like this, right? We want it to have a little bit of that that blueness to it as well, like we did from with our other ones. So we're going to drop down the red and the green over here a little bit. And this is a little bit too dark, so let's increase this. We'll do something like 45 maybe. And we're just going to mess around with these numbers until we get it somewhere appropriate, right? Yeah, something like this. And again, what we can do is if I hold down Shift and Alt, I can kind of take away some sections, but we can create something similar to that. And then again, holding down Alt, I can do something on the other side here. We could do something like this, another ridge on this side as well. So we can kind of create these little edges here. And we'll make this narrower as it kind of gets around. So you can see we start to create this circular shape. And then what you'd want to do is you want to also create like a highlight on the other side here. Now I like to do this in conjunction with images so that you can kind of work with all of this stuff. And so you can do this instead of doing like the painted shadows like we did before, right? So you can come down in here and you can actually add in some additional kind of shadow elements. And this looks really good. And this actually works really well with in conjunction with the painted elements as well. Adds a little bit more contrast in there. And we can do the same here. We might even want to come into like these little areas and add some small kind of gradients along these areas. And I'm just going to remove this from the middle here. We're going to keep this open here, probably do something a little bit more interesting there. And then what we can also do is we can create a new effects layer. And again, we will go right into our adjusted colors, but we're going to go in the other direction. We're going to make some highlights here. So we're going to increase the brightness here a little bit. And then again, we'll enable a mask. And then what we can do is something similar. We can kind of draw out our little highlights here, where this was going to be like the brightest here, and then we can blur these out so that we get a nice little soft addition here. We'll bring this right up to the peak. And we can kind of go back and forth and play with this a little bit to create some interesting kind of connections here. And this might be a little bit too bright, so let's bring this down. Maybe we'll do something like 54. Yeah. And again, we can turn this off, right? You can see how much that actually adds to there as we turn this on and off here. Now again, we can do the same thing. Let's come down to these rocks and let's add in some highlights on these ones. Now what I like to do is when I really kind of do a deep dive into creating something, I'll do several different layers of this. Oh, thanks so much. So you can actually create several different types of shadows that you can do with effects layers as well as highlights. And you can also just paint them in as well. So we can do it exactly the same way from the other side. The difference is that if you paint over an object, what you'll do is lose some of the elements that are there, right, as you build it up, which is usually okay in shadow. It's okay in shadow to kind of make the edges a little bit more obscure, but in highlights, you tend to want to make it more, it should accentuate it more, right? It should cause things to kind of pop out more. Unless you're doing like specular highlights where you want that really like powerful kind of like glare that kind of comes off of it. Yeah, great. So what kind of other elements do you think that we should kind of create here? Which direction do you think that we should go with this? I think what I'm going to do at this point, we have a pretty good base here. But I'm going to come in and I'm going to actually add in, we started to add in some of this like texture stuff around, breaking up the image a little bit. But I think I'm going to break it up a little bit more with some additional kind of elements here. Let's go into our modules, not our modules, our assets. And I'm going to go into, I think the winter art package is where I want to go. And we're going to go into these effects. I'm going to grab some of this elements. I think this one is what I'm going to actually use. So let's go in here. We're going to go into our stamp tool and drag and drop that right in there for something like this. What I'm actually going to do with this is I'm going to go, let's go down onto a lower painting layer, maybe something like here. And I'm going to actually change the color of this a little bit. And I'm going to start off with, I'm going to grab, I'm going to open up my color picker and I'm going to grab some of these colors, right? So that this is going to match very well with what's around here. And then I'm going to do some variations in my color, right? I can hold down R, G, or B, and I can use my mouse wheel. And you can see that as I move this around, right, I can change this color with slight variations from each, right? So let's add in a little bit more red, and then I'm going to take away a little bit of the green to make it more red like this. And then I'm going to lower down its opacity. And this is just going to make it feel as though that there is maybe some other materials, different elements. We can make this a bit larger and a little bit more transparent here. And then we can go and we can create some additional color variations. Maybe we'll do something that's a little bit like this, a little bit more on the green side. And we're going to just break up some of this stuff a little bit. Again, we can lower down that opacity. And we can do this right over the top of a lot of our rocks and things. Who knows what is going to be causing these kinds of elements to kind of appear here. But we're doing this kind of like alien type environment, right? So this is where we can really experiment and do a lot of fun kind of stuff with it, right? Yeah, maybe we'll do some darker ones as well. So let's bring this down. Maybe something like this. What other kind of things do you guys think would be in an environment like this? We could do some interesting rock formations. We could even probably create some more, a different type of geological kind of stuff, right? Like maybe like ooh, fossils. That sounds fun. Maybe we could do like a crevasse down through here or whatnot. Yep, we could do all of those things. Rivers and that kind of stuff are super easy to do. All you have to do is go into an R package like, let's go into, well, we can just type in river brush. And here we have a whole bunch of different types of elements, depending on what we're trying to achieve here. But let's say, for example, if we were going to do something like this, this is in, here. All you have to do is to go into this area here. Let's turn off our fill and go into our stroke. And what we'll do is we're actually going to replace, we'll use, we can just use this one. We'll drop this in here. And then if you were going to do a river, you can just kind of paint out. Oh, we want to make sure that we are in this mode here. Yeah, and then we can just kind of paint out a river super easily. Something just like that. If you were going to do like a waterfall and whatnot, there's all kinds of different waterfall elements as well to build. A geyser would be much in the same kind of way, right? You could just do some sort of indicator on the ground and then just do like steam or whatnot rising up out of it. We have rivers of blood, all the things that you might want to encounter. But let's do, I'm going to do like actual, I think we'll do like a little indent in the ground through here rather than a river. I think if we go into our Abyssal map pack here, in our brushes, we have some things that might, or in our decorations, some things that might help us with that, like these cliffs and whatnot. Or we could build our own. We could also just build it. Yeah, why don't we do it? Why don't we do it kind of from scratch? I think that would be fun. Here we have all kinds of different ones, and these can all be used as brushes as well. So you can just grab something like this and do all kinds of things. It's not completely designed for this, but we can just get rid of that. Yeah, that's what we'll make. And what kind of fossil should we do? That sounds fun too. We could do like skeletons and stuff embedded into the stone. And here, these clouds are great for creating like geyser elements as well. You can just kind of drag and drop these right out onto the playing field. So the first thing that I would do in creating something along those lines is we can do this a couple of different ways, depending on how we want to achieve the look that we're trying to do here. I'm kind of assuming that this is like this dusty kind of sand and whatnot. So whenever you had an element like that, it's probably going to be rocky on the bottom. So we could go into something along the lines of like underground. And I think if we go into our backgrounds here, we'll have, we have these ones, which is kind of like pebbly, and then some different kind of rock elements that we could grab. I think if we go into our decorations as well, no, I guess that we just have that, and then we have like the stone. These are like tunnels and whatnot. let's look up stone fill. And see what we have here that might be kind of work good for us here. So yeah, maybe something like this, a little bit less. So we can turn off our stroke here. Let's go over and we'll grab and drop this right in here. The reason we want to do that is I'm going to draw out the bottom of my gorge, and then I'm going to build on top of that. And we might even want to, we should probably name these. So this is, which that kind of looks interesting all by itself, doesn't it? This is going to be our ground. And then this one is where we have all of these elements painted, right? And then this is all of our textures. So let's do this. And this will be our decorations. And so we're going to put in another painting layer. I'm going to do it here. And we might want to change where some of these are as we kind of progress here. And this, we might even want to put this above it, depending on how it kind of like plays out here. We're going to stay out with this for right now. And should we have it? Yeah, let's have it go off, but then like narrow to a peak kind of down here, I think. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to hold down Control to snap to the grid here as I begin to kind of pull this out. I don't want to use any of these shapes. I'm going to use a custom shape here and kind of build it as we go. But I want it to kind of snap right here. And then I'm going to, I think what we'll do is I'm going to hold down the mouse button, and I want to have lots of elements that I can kind of manipulate here. You can see I'm going to bring it to a point. And then we're going to do something like that, right? And you can see that this is, we're definitely going to have to put this above this other stuff here. So let's grab this and throw this right on top here. And you can see we have this like stone little like texture here. This will be at the bottom. And then we can come into here and like this one we don't need, and that we don't need. We'll have it more like that. But I really want to be able to grab these sections and move these around and create some interesting shapes. And we'll refine this image a little bit here as we kind of move things around. But what we're actually going to do is we want to have like these, if you ever look at the edge of a cliff or whatnot, you have lots of ins and outs. It's rarely is it a big flat surface that kind of just goes down. You have these outcroppings and areas, and I'm assuming that's probably due to different types of erosion and whatnot. And we might even want to make this like a little bit more of a tight addition. We can actually probably just delete these ones. And as we move along here, we'll be doing some adjustments to this shape, and then we'll simplify it once we get to the very end. There's no need for us to have a lot of these if they're not necessary. But this will be pretty good for right now. What we can actually do with this, and this is one of the reasons why the painting system works so well with the effects layers, is that we can actually create from this our own effects layers that will mask just to this, right? Which is a really great option for us, especially if we're going to be, let's move some of these over like this. If we're going to be using this and trying to separate from the bottom area down here. We'll just kind of do something along those lines. Yeah, we'll get a nice little area going there. Great. So let's jump back over into here. And you can see we have this nice little area over here. Let's actually go into the edit fill. I'm going to make this a bit darker. I want to make sure that this seems receded like down below the area over here. So I'm going to hold RG and B. I'm just going to darken this up. The thing that I'm going to do is, this is too repeating. I'm going to make this a lot larger. And I'm going to rotate it some. We'll get some kind of interesting stuff that's kind of going on in here. And I'm just using as my base element down here, right? Like, we don't have to have this too particularly anything, but we also want to make it a little bit more in line with the colors that we have here. So we want to do something, I'm going to bring these colors kind of more in line, something like this probably. What I'm doing is holding R, G, or B, or a combination of them, and just adjusting the colors until it looks like it kind of goes with it a little bit better. Now, the way that you can sell this, right, we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to add a kind of like a cliff edge to this, but we're going to be building this out pretty much from scratch. So when we think about this, what we want to do is we want to imagine this in a particular way where we start to think about the way that the shadow plays into how we see depth, right? And it's kind of what we talked about in the very beginning, right? Adding these little elements on here, what we actually do is we trick our eye because this is always just going to be a flat image, but we wanted to make it look as though that it's not. So to sell that depth, what we want to do is we want to have this to be like this dark little area down here, but we want to have a good highlight on all of the areas where the light's going to be coming from this direction and shining off of these elements and casting more shadows down in here. Remember we were talking about ambient occlusion? So we're going to have a lot of that down at the bottom of this, right? And we might even want to make this look as though that we have some bits that kind of go in on the edges here. So the easiest way for me to kind of blend this in is, again, in this particular area over here. If you look over here, we can actually have a fade on the edge by holding F down. So if I hold F down and I use my mouse wheel, you can see that I can fade those edges out, right? We can get a little bit of where this is like a rounded over element. Now we may or may not need to use that. We might actually do something over the top of this. But that's something that we always have available to us. And we'll have to grab these and just move these out a little bit so that it kind of goes along this way. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my effects layer over here. And I'm going to use this. See, it says create using painting as mask, right? So what this does is this painting layer, I can create a new effects layer. And this is already masked out exactly to the shape that I just painted. So I can come into here and I can go to my adjust colors and I can darken this down even more, as you can see here. Now the reason why I want to do it this way is because this is going to immediately map out this edge for me here. So now what I can do is I can go into my hide area over here and I can start to, the areas where I think the light's going to be getting down into and whatnot, I can start to remove some of these areas. And we might even want to have some like here. On these edges. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to blur this stuff out a little bit here. And we might have some like down in here, but we might get some nice little shadows from there. We're probably going to want to blur that out all the way. And then we can start to build some of these little areas down here. And we can go back and forth. So what I'm imagining is that the light's coming down anywhere where this is going to be cast out here. We want to remove some of this. And I'm going to do this rather jaggedly here. We'll move this back a little bit. And we'll probably get some like right here. And we want to bring this back into some shadow. And we can remove some from like right here. Okay, now to bring this in line with everything else, what we're going to do is we're just going to adjust the colors here. So we're going to bring down our red, maybe bring this down to like 45. And then we'll maybe bring this up a little bit. Yeah, so something like this. And you can see that we're already starting to create a little bit of that idea that this is sunken down into the ground, right? Like this is something that's a little bit further away. Now to further emphasize that, we can go back into this painting area over here and go into our element here. And again, I'm just going to darken this up a little bit. I'm going to make this, and as you can see, this makes it feel as though that it's receding more and more and more. So we have some nice little elements over here, and we have some different shapes and whatnot. And so what we can actually begin to do now is I'm going to create, we have a few different ones, and probably what we should do is consolidate these a little bit more, where we have this highlight here. And instead of having another shadow element, we should probably just use this one to do the same thing. But I'm actually going to use it in a little bit different of a way. I'm gonna actually come in here and fill out some of these areas over here. So what I can do is add in some additional kind of shadow elements here. I think I'm going to bring this a little bit up in too as well. We want a little bit of that shadow kind of rolling up over the edge here. And we can even go into our shadow layer over here. And if we go back into our stamp mode, what we can do is we can grab our little trusty guy over here, and we can actually grab, and what this will do is well, we accidentally loaded up the fill element over here, but we want to go here. You can see that's going to grab that for us once again. And we can do something similar in through here. Make this a bit bigger here. And again, we can build up some of these shadows a little bit here. So I'm using a combination of my effects layers and painted shadow elements here. I think we're going to make this a little bit more round over here. Fade out some of these areas a little bit more. And now let's go into our effects layer that is for our highlights, and we can go into here and let's do our little bit of a highlight around some of these edges. Right, we want this, and we can even do some maybe like down and through here. Little areas where the light manages to make its way down in through here. I'm going to do along these edges. Oh, and I should also let everyone know, so next week I'll be streaming on Sunday, I believe, for PaizoCon. And we're going to be taking a look at their map packs and how we can use them inside of Fantasy Grounds, as well as all those different uses and whatnot. So how would we make a cave entrance or some sort of entrance to underground? Oh, you can do that super easy as well. So where would you like the cave entrance to be? There's so many different ways to approach this. Depending on the cave entrance that you're trying to make. So if we were just going to make like a cave entrance like here, we could easily do it. We could also do one like in the side, the face of something over here. But what I'm going to actually do before we do like a cave entrance, I'll show you guys how to make one from scratch if you want to. Is we want to do something that's going to be a little bit more on the edge here, right? And I'm going to do this on the same painting layer here. We're going to build up this edge a little bit because you want to have some things that kind of hang over the edge a little bit or interact with this a little bit. We can do a couple of different things here. One of the things that we can do is we can augment this stuff. We can change some of the directions of this. We can move some of this in and out on this. And this is why I wanted to use a lot of these little elements here. And because of this layered approach that we've done, this will react really well to the elements that we've already kind of like painted or moved around. So you can see when we come back here, you can get this really nice varied like ins and outs and whatnot, making it feel a little bit more believable. And we might even want to go in here, we might even want to change our fade element here a little bit so it's not so abrupt. It's a little bit more rigid. And then we'll move some of this stuff around. Pull something out like this. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. We'll do a couple over here. Yeah, you can see how that really changes that dynamic a lot, right? Like it really makes it feel a lot more natural as it's kind of like carved into the environment here. So on the same kind of painting layer here, what I can do is I can come back over into here, and what we want to do is create some elements maybe. And we can do it a couple of different ways. We can either do some stuff maybe underneath, like on the ground down here, like rocks and whatnot that might have fallen down. So if we go into our packages here, we can go into, we can just type in rock, for example. This will take a minute because there's lots of different rocks. Well, thanks, Decoy. And you can always do this even if you have a pre-made map or whatnot. Feel free to get right in there inside of Fantasy Grounds, and you can do so much to augment them, change them for whatever you need to be. It's one of the great things that this system offers is that ability to kind of go in there. I think that we used rocks like this, right? We wanted to make it look like they were kind of covered with like sand and debris, but down here we might not want to. So let's just grab something. These are from the coastline. So let's do something that's a little bit more, yeah, underground. Let's maybe grab something like this. So if we go into our underground map pack 2, and we'll go into our decorations here. So here we have a few different rocks that we can kind of grab from. And if we grab something like this, what we can actually do now is if we place this in here, because we have all of this stuff that's above it, you can see that it's already going to fall into these like shadow elements, right? And I think that these are actually a little bit too dark in here. So the way I'm going to change that is I'm actually going to lower down the opacity of these rocks. Maybe to something like this. And so when I stamp them in here, you can see that they're going to blend into the environment a lot better. And if I do something where it kind of pops out into these areas, you can see that it's going to work as it's going to move out of the shadows. But we're going to get just enough shadow in here to get them to feel as though that they are something along these lines, right? And we can change these out. Let's we're just using these for like shapes and whatnot down here. And we can always come back in and let's grab some of these and move them around. It's a little bit too clustered up there. Sometimes when things look a little bit too contrived, you want to go back in and just you can just move them around. Let's grab these two guys. Well, let's just grab this one. Maybe move it over. We'll put it right out here in the middle. Yeah, that's much better. So here we have like these elements that are kind of fallen down from the sides, maybe from erosion or whatnot. Just to add a little bit more kind of believable elements that are going to be down in this little area down here. Things that make the environment feel a little bit more believable, right? Like things that might have happened, or because our maps should be interesting places. All right, well, we'll come back to this in a moment. Oh yeah, you can do bridges very, very easily. We have lots of different types of bridges and all kinds of different elements. So we could build a bridge across this. We actually probably the easiest way to do it would be in our stroke system here. So we look at bridge. I'm sure that we have yeah, we could do something like this pretty easily. Well, we want to make sure that we don't do it as a boom, you got a bridge. There's all kinds of different bridges and different ways that you can kind of do that super easily. But let's actually build, and there's a lot of like, there's like some pre-made kind of cave entrances that you can just kind of drag and drop onto places as well. Little areas and whatnot, but we'll build one from scratch here, make it a little bit easier for us to kind of control what it is. So if we were going to do, I'm actually going to go down into here and let's grab these rocks. Right, this is the layer that the rocks are on, right? Yeah. Doesn't seem to want to grab those, so we can just go into the winter art pack, which is where those ones are. Oh, I don't need to type it in. I can just go there. Yeah, so these are the ones that we used over here. So if I grab, let's say something like this, and I'm just going to make a new painting layer here. We're going to drop this down, something like this, right? And again, what I'll do is we'll grab some of these colors. It's going to be a little bit brighter than that. Not quite that bright. See if we can get the, we should probably, let me zoom in here a little bit. We'll get this a little bit closer here. Yep, there we go. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab this hexadecimal code, just in case I need to grab it again. So basically what you want to do when you're doing a cave entrance is you want to sell this idea of this area that you can go into, right? So all you need to do is kind of build a structure and then create like a shadow that kind of comes out from underneath, right? So here, if we were to do something like this, and then we can grab maybe something like this. And you can see what I'm actually doing here is I'm just going to build up this idea of this kind of like elements here, right? I suppose I could do maybe, yeah. Well, this will be good enough for us to kind of imagine it from here, right? And so all I'm going to be doing with this particular element here is I'll create a new kind of like painting area underneath here. And again, I'll just grab this guy right here. And I'm going to make this dark. And I'm going to lower down the opacity of this so I can make a nice little like fade out here. And then what I'll do is go onto this layer as well. Because we're going to have some shadow coming from this stuff. And boom, you have a nice little cave entrance. If you need to come into here and lower down the opacity of this, if you want this to be a little bit, you know, you can as well. So that's basically all you need to do. You need to just create like this hole. I usually build it with a couple of different rocks, kind of build this like little area up, and then do some heavy shadows there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you have any questions whatsoever, please. I am happy to assist in any way that I can. I'm going to add some more of this type of debris as well down here. And I think what we'll do is go back into our shadow area over here, and we can grab this. And I'm actually going to make it a bit oblong here. Make it a little bit shorter as well, maybe something like this. I'm going to do some shadows like this, kind of these little elements. I'm going to kind of angle them in. Make these ridges seem a little bit more believable. And then do a little bit more coming out from like that edge down there. And then we can come in and maybe do a little bit from these rocks as well. Yeah, very cool. We seem to have a dot over here. Not sure where that came from. Yeah, so what else do you think that we should add to this environment? I like to do large kind of ambient shadow sometimes as well. Adds a nice little feeling that the ground is uneven, right? Like you have these little gradual dips and raises. And then we have this cool little bit that kind of like dives down into the earth here. We might even want to do, let's try this out. I'm going to go, let's go here. And we can create a new painting layer here. I'm just going to try and test this out here a little bit. So we could do something like this down here on the floor as well. And then we can come into here and let's lower down that opacity a bit and fade out those edges. And I think with this one, we can double click this and then we can go to simplify. And then we can kind of build out what would be maybe where this sand and dust or whatever it happens to be would find its way to the very bottom here. And we could also make it a little bit darker. Oh, we got to go into here to help sell that distance that it's down in there. We might even want to fade out those edges just a little bit more as well. Get this nice gradual kind of feeling here, and that also makes it a little bit more connected to our piece here. Yeah, you guys have any questions about anything that I did? I know sometimes I use a lot of like shortcut keys. So if I do something, I always try to remember to say what I'm doing. But that probably doesn't always happen. So if I do something, you're not quite sure how I did it, please let me know. I'm happy to help you understand my thought process and what I actually do on the keyboard. But hopefully you guys can see how powerful this image creation system is. We completely just created this from scratch. You can actually, just with a couple of color fills or image texture fills, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Yeah, so why don't we do, we can do some more like rock kind of elements. Let's do some things. We have this area that kind of goes down into the earth. Let's do some stuff that kind of like pops up as well, right? Like some like, and then maybe we could build like a natural rock kind of like formation over this and create like a nice little element there. I'm going to make a folder and let's drop this down here and we'll call this one we'll call it a gorge. And then we'll just drop these right inside it. So that's all one little unit there. And we can create a new painting layer. We'll put this one right underneath our shadows over here. We might actually want to do some of it above the shadows though. Yeah, I think we will. I'm just going to close this and reopen it. I think that'll allow me to pick that stuff again. apparently not. Now that's already on that particular layer there. So we'll probably do that the same on this layer. Let's just add on that layer something like that, and then we can just start to paint with these and create some nice little rock formations. So if we grab something like this, and we can begin to build out some neat little like rock creations over here. And one of the great things about using these is what we can actually do is we can like squash these things down and change them quite a lot. So it doesn't seem, we can use a limited number of elements here, and it won't seem as though that we have. It will and then I like to kind of blend some of these spaces together. And we can do some of this stuff as well, kind of like scattered around. Yeah, and what we can do, let's go into our adjustment here, and we'll just remove that. What we can actually do is we can kind of paint this on here. And we can actually paint in, like this will be a cast shadow, but it will be like way over here, right? So it'll help give us that feeling that like this is really high up. And we'll also have a shadow that kind of comes this way. It'd actually be like here. We might even want to drop this down underneath our shadow layer. And then we can come into our shadow layer. And all of these shadows that we used in these particular areas here, right, we can just remove them or delete them. And then we can use this same shadow layer. And we can build this kind of shadow up over here. We can kind of emphasize some of these elements, kind of that layered feeling. Yeah, very cool. And then let's go into our effects layer that does our highlights here. And we really want to accentuate this stuff right here. It's being like this high area. We've built this like kind of rock formation bridge that's kind of going up over here. Fairly simple. Yeah, so you guys have any questions about any of that? And then I think what I would do is go into this painting layer. And let's grab some of this stuff. Well, let's go into our stamp here. I'm going to lower down the opacity here a bit. And then we can kind of stamp out having this kind of raising up out of the ground here a little. Ooh, that's a weird bug that just happened. Right, so you have like these elements that kind of just like raise up out, and then other elements, so you can create some really cool kind of interactions there. All right, well, if no one has any questions or anything, let's. I'm going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll either build something more onto this one or create something new. So if you guys just want to hang out for a minute, I will be right back. All right, I'm back. Thanks everyone for hanging out while I took a short break, refreshed my beverages, and now let's continue on our journey here. So, what do you guys think that we should add to this as well? Anything else? Or should we move on to a new project? Well, I don't really see much else that we could do. This is a pretty interesting kind of scene, and has a lot of kind of like playable strategy that you could kind of do with it, I think. So then, why don't we start to build something new? What do you guys think? What should we make next? Change our grid size here. Lower the opacity of our grid. Any suggestions? Do you guys think we should do an interior or an exterior? Maybe we should do. Let's have a look. Let's see which art packs we haven't used in a while. Hmm. Maybe we'll do like a settlement. We haven't done a settlement in a while. We could use this the settlement pack here, which is a pretty fun one. And in fact, with the new painting system, one of the we can go over some of this stuff as well. So one of the things that we used to do is have more of like a tiled approach, but with the new painting system, you can kind of mix and match this much better here. We'll use one of these like um, this fill element here for our land. And we can paint this out and using it as a fill and be able to interact with it any way we wish here, right? And we can do this in a couple of different ways. If you look at these pre-built like land, they have a bit of an effect on the edges here. As you can see, there's a little bit of that feeling of depth to it, and then there's a little bit of glow to the outside. Now we can kind of do something similar to that, but we'll have to like paint in particular elements. These are kind of set up to be used as pieces that kind of like snap together here. So when I originally created this, these would be like tile elements, right? That kind of like all snap together. As you can see, something along these lines. And you could build out your coastlines and whatnot. But now what we can actually do, let's delete those, is we can kind of mix and match these elements together, but we can go into our painting area here, and I'm going to turn off the stroke, and we can do our land element here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a whole area out here, and I'm just holding down Control to snap to the grid here. We'll build out this, and this is my base land texture. Now what I can do is I can go over into my eraser, or I can even stay in here and I can go to the subtraction element. And let's say I want to do like a coastline over here. All I have to do now is kind of trace out whatever I want to have for my coastline, and then just delete that, right? And so we can create our own shapes and whatnot. And then I can go into my eraser here, and then I can start to erase out any areas that let's say I'm going to have like a river that kind of comes through here. And we might want to do some little other ones. And then I'll make this smaller. Maybe we'll do a little one coming off here. And then I can come in and do the same thing. I can create some islands and whatnot. Let's build some interesting kind of shapes here. And let's do even smaller. We'll just have this getting a little bit smaller. Have this very old and meandering kind of place here. You might even have some smaller ones that kind of do this. And then we can come in and create some additional kind of shapes here. And we can always come in after the fact as well and move these around or even delete these. I find this very relaxing working on stuff in FG. And you can see how quickly you can kind of create these elements, right? Build up these areas. So maybe we're going to create this area over here. And then what I would do is I'd create another painting layer. And let's just drop this in underneath here. And this can be for our water. Now you can certainly still use a lot of the same elements that you had before, but you just don't need to anymore. I think that we can just use this section here. And again, what I'll do is I'm just going to hold down Control and snap to the grid there. Oh, I don't want to erase. I want to create a new one. And then I think what we'll do is let's actually rotate this like that. Line that back up, and then we'll increase the size here. We'll do something like that. We'll get this nice like texture stuff that's kind of going on here. And here in this kind of system here, right? Like we can grab this, and let's say we want to make some islands out here. Well, all we have to do is on our land layer, we can just start to draw out some shapes here. And then we can go back into our eraser if we want to do like some smaller elements. We can get rid of these little tiny ones. And kind of build up a lot of this kind of stuff like this. I think we'll change the shape of that a little bit. We'll make that a little bit. Yeah. We can do all kinds of like fun little additives using all of those different things. And then what we can actually do is if we go into, I believe, here we have the same kind of thing with the grass. We have some pre-built kind of shapes as well that we can use. So again, what we'll do is I'll create a new painting layer. I like to separate them into layers just so that if I ever want to do something in between them, or if there is something that I want to adjust, oftentimes it's a lot easier to do it on a by level, by layer way than it is somewhere else. And here what I'm actually going to do is we can grab, I'm going to hold down Control and just kind of, well, let's try that again. I'm not going to hold down Control, but I'm going to grab this and drag out some shapes here. And I'm going to go a little bit over here because I'm going to fade this. So if we go into here, we can kind of fade that out, those edges. And then we can go into our eraser tool here, and we can start to erase out some sections. And you see these areas that are these are too it's all faded in from the edges here. Let's we can actually grab this and simplify it so it'll be a little bit easier to manage. But what we can do is we can go into our eraser, for example, and we could erase sections out of the middle here. We should be able to. We can go into here and go to subtract. And we can go back into add. We should grab this so it's all the same. And this will add it to these elements. So you can, there's a lot of tools here that you can use to kind of build out these sections. And I'm gonna, let's just simplify these ones. Make this a little bit easier to deal with. And this fade might be a little bit too much. Let's change that. Yeah, maybe something like this. And then we can come in here and move some of this stuff around. Make whatever shape you want. I'm going to get rid of those. And we can start to augment this stuff around a little bit. And we can use this in conjunction with some of these other shapes, right? So we can go into our stamp tool and maybe we have some of these things that are a lot more complex in their design. So what we can actually do is kind of like stamp some of this stuff in and around. And this will create, we can do our basic shape and then augment it, you see. And we can even lower down the opacity if we want to have it to be a little bit. Some good interactions as it layers over each other. And see, you can see how quickly you can kind of build up these layers. We could even do like different color variations and whatnot. And a really good way to do a lot of color variation in your areas here is we can go into, like, let's say, for example, this area, we'll create a new mask from all of these painted areas because I don't want it to affect my water, right? So then I can come into here and I can go into adjust colors, and maybe we want to make something a little bit more reddish, like this. And you can see it's going to affect all of this and not the water itself. So what we can do is we can go into the hide area over here, and we can start to just remove out some sections. And again, we can blur out those edges, and we can make this maybe even like a little bit darker. And we can just kind of go around. This is probably a little bit too dark. Maybe we'll make this like 46. And you can see that it just causes some variations here across everything. And one of the things that I think is so important when you're trying to create different areas is you want to make sure that you get a lot of that that kind of elements that kind of go back and forth there a little bit. Might even want to bring this up to like 49. Yeah. And so if you wanted to do something similar to that, right, what you can do is if you wanted to do, let's say, have a little bit of, if you looked in the, let's see here, if we go back up into here, and if you looked at like these elements and they have a little bit of a glow on the outside, you can do that with an effects layer as well. We can bring this down in underneath all of these things. And again, we could just go to adjust colors. Let's brighten that up. We'll add a mask. And then you could just kind of go around the outside here and create a little bit of a thing. You might want to, you'd want to probably do this with some color as well. And then what I would have done is put like a stroke on this stuff. But this is also something that you could do for like beaches, or and do like a nice little gradient that kind of fades off. But I think that the crisper kind of line for right now is going to look a little bit better for us. And we could do this on any number of different areas. And one of the great things that I like about doing it this way, and this is what I was talking before about using the different layers, is we can go into our layers tab, and now I can lower down the opacity on all of this if I want. And you can see that we can kind of blend this in all the way down to nothing, but in with the different elements a lot better. And I can also adjust the colors for the entire area and not have to worry about how that's going to interact with everything out there as well. Now that we have some different areas like that, we can do the same thing. If we go into here, if you notice, we also have like a cobblestone texture as well. So if we were going to do like a city area over here, maybe, and we'll do this on the same painting layer just for simplicity's sake. So let's say we decide we're going to build like a city over in here. We might want to, no, we don't want to erase. We might want to drag out something like this. Don't really want, make that a bit bigger. I think that's fine. And let's get rid of that fade. And we might want to change the shape of this, but we can do that like super easy anyway. Lots of different ways, but let's just kind of do something like this around the outside. Oh, that's interesting. I guess we shouldn't encompass the entire thing. We should do each side. So we have this strange shape here. We can double click this and simplify it just so it's easier for us to manage. And then we can kind of build right on top of this. And we might actually want to fade this out a little bit, as like dirt kind of comes in from the outside. Might even want to lower down its opacity a little bit. But then we can go into our structures. And one of the things that we have here is we have these like all kinds of different elements here, but we have like all of these like pre-groupings of buildings. And so this is supposed to be done from like a city map or like a city level. And so we can go into our stamp and I'd create a new painting layer for that. We might want to have some color variations and whatnot. And you can change the scale of these to whatever you wish, but then you can just kind of like snap down some buildings. And you can do this super fast. And a lot of these are set up to naturally kind of create like roadways. So as you can see here, we can instantly kind of create, like these are going to follow along different paths and whatnot. And we can flip this, flip it. And the cool thing is we can come in here and like, let's say for example, this one, we want to open up that a little bit. We can move this down a little and reorganize these. And you can see we can zoom in and have a pretty good understanding about what each one of this kind of stuff is. And some of these are a lot more involved and larger than others. You can see how you can really start to build out some of these areas fairly quickly here. And what we can do is we can go back into here, and let's say we want to change this a little bit. Maybe we're going to bring some of that cobblestone down through here. And see here, we might want to bring in that fade a little bit. We might even want to scale it a little bit down a little. And we could do like a little lighthouse out here or something. And also included in this is all of the different elements that you might want to like build, as well as individual buildings, docks and stuff, bridges. So we can definitely grab like a bridge. Maybe we'll do a big bridge out to this island. And we have all kinds of docks. Hmm. Well, we'll just put that there. We'll move this over like this. I'd like to do some docks, but do like some like buildings on top of them. So Yeah, we can build some stuff like this, and then we can throw some boats in here and do all kinds of fun stuff. And we'll do this whole like region, right? We should fill in some of these areas and through here. We can make these like little squares and whatnot. Yeah, it's really fun to just kind of sit in here and create this stuff for sure. I think what we'll do is lower down the opacity of that a little bit. Yeah, that works a little bit better for me. And let's go into our, we have like trees and whatnot. Let's go into the no outline ones, and we can kind of just like pile these on top of each other. We should probably, I'm going to delete these ones. Let's go into this one. Let's put them all in here. I always like it when the trees, like some of the trees kind of like overhang on some of the buildings. Guess we can do some smaller groups here. Yeah, cool. And we even have elements in here for like setting up to make it seem like more like a map. Decorative elements and whatnot. Compass rose. Well, do you guys have any questions, or is there anything that you would like to see done, or? Well, if you guys don't have any questions, or if there's nothing else that I can help with you guys today, I think I might call it here. Starting to get a pretty bad storm outside, so I think we'll quit while we're ahead. Although I could just sit here all day and doing this stuff. Yeah, I think we'll stop here. We'll finish this up next week. No, we won't. Next week, I'm going to be streaming on Sunday instead of Saturday, and we're going to be doing it for PaizoCon. So I will actually be working with demonstrating some of their maps and how they're integrated into Fantasy Grounds, as well as ways that you can augment them and use them more effectively. If you haven't tried them out, they're really great maps. So we'll be going over that stuff. And again, that's going to be on Sunday instead of Saturday. So yeah, but if you guys ever have any questions, or if there's anything that you'd like to see me do, or in any of your map creations, if there's something that you run into that's an issue, please let me know. And we'll see what we can do to take care of that. But great. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you guys all have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.